NPR just made the most hypocritical legal argument in American history. They're suing President Trump, claiming that cutting their taxpayer funding violates the First Amendment. Let that sink in, right? A media organization that spent years promoting censorship, whose own CEO called free speech the #1 challenge to controlling information, now wants constitutional protection for their government paychecks. They believe that you should be forced to fund their propaganda whether you agree with it or not. Congressional Republicans are exposing their lies with brutal precision. The tweets are flying, the lawsuits are filed, and NPR is about to learn that free speech doesn't mean free money. We're unpacking it all, so stay with us, all right? Now, while NPR pushes propaganda that weakens American men, here's the truth they won't tell you. Something you eat every day is destroying your testosterone. It's not junk food or sugar. It's something marketed as healthy that's tanking your energy and your motivation. Sculpt Nation's Test Boost Max uses 8 natural ingredients to support healthy testosterone without prescriptions or synthetic hormones. Thousands of men are building muscle, burning fat, and reclaiming their drive naturally. And you can watch their free video exposing this testosterone-killing food and learn how to fight back by visiting sculptnation.com/NNN. It's linked down below for the truth the mainstream media won't share. No prescriptions, no BS, just results. All right, now let's get into it. We've got a bunch of tweets here we bookmarked just for you. Oh, yes, and they are fire. And I want to start with our own. Yeah, I posted this on April 19th. Defund NPR. Quote tweeting, fight with memes. The internet never forgets. They screenshotted an NPR post. A new poll finds 40% of respondents believe the baseless conspiracy theory that the coronavirus was created in a lab. There is zero evidence for this. Scientists say the virus was transmitted to humans from another species. Well, I hate to break it to you, NPR, but the truth has come out. You can just go to covid19.gov. What is the website? Yeah, I think that's what it is. But yeah, NPR getting schooled, but we'll never forget. Representative Darrell Issa says it's time to end America's disastrous experiment with state-sponsored media. Defund NPR, PBS, Voice of America, and all the rest. Now, Lucius George, NPR wonders why we don't want to be funding them at gunpoint. Okay, here's 2013. I love these memes. 2013, maybe it's time to swap burgers for bugs, says the UN. We're going to put a little bit of that clown makeup on. At Bug Eating Festival, kids crunch down on the food of the future. Clown face, getting stronger. Your ancestors probably ate insects, so what's bugging you? Clown face gets stronger. And then 2023, this right-wing conspiracy theory about eating bugs is about as racist as you can think. Full clown makeup. You know, the NPR used to be more center, but that has shifted leftwards in recent years. Take a look at this graph, how NPR's all-size media bias rating has changed over time. Conservative, 2016, all the way through 2021. And all of a sudden, what happened here? 2022, boom, left. 2023, left. 2024, left. Yeah. But I think we have the answer to that. We're going to show you in a second. Jack Posobiec says NPR even refused to comment from itself. The CPB board shall cancel existing direct funding. Okay, he's showing an article here from NPR. NPR. An article on NPR, and at the bottom it says NPR did not immediately respond to requests for comments on the executive order. An NPR reporter could not get a response from NPR itself. Seems like you just walk right into the executive office and ask them the question, right? They're your bosses, but they're not going to give a comment? How ridiculous is that? Moving right along here, Eric Darty, NPR, 16 hours ago, NPR has just sued President Trump for revoking their federal funding, saying the action threatens the existence of the public radio system that millions of Americans across the country rely on. I don't know about you, but I think most people are getting their information from the interwebs these days, right? Apps on their phone. I honestly can't remember the last time I actually turned on a radio. Yeah, doesn't really. I can't think about what happened next. Oh, here's something from May from the White House. That Friday feeling when you end taxpayer subsidization of NPR and PBS. President Trump walking out to Marine One, photograph black and white, beautiful. Thomas Sowell quotes the NPR CEO. I've never seen any political bias. Oh, is that right? We're going to go to this committee hearing with Jim Jordan grilling the CEO of NPR. This is solid gold.
Former senior business editor for NPR. Former senior business editor for NPR.
How long do you work at NPR?
I believe he was there just over 25 years.
25 years? Award-winning journalist? Did he win any awards?
Our time to
Peabody Award? That's pretty important, isn't it?
That is, absolutely.
So pretty distinguished journalist, right?
Certainly.
And he wrote a long story about what you do at NPR. Is NPR biased?
Congressman, I have never seen any instance of...
Never?
Of political bias determining editorial decisions, no.
Well, Mr. Berliner, in his story last year, wrote, in the D.C. area, editorial positions at NPR, he said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. Is that accurate?
We do not track the numbers or the voter registration, but I find that
Was award-winning journalist who worked 25 years at NPR, Mr. Berliner, was he lying when he wrote that?
I am not presuming such. I just we don't track that information about a journalist.
87 to 0, and you're not biased?
I think that is concerning if those numbers are accurate.
It's concerning. I mean, it wasn't 44-43, it wasn't 60-27, it wasn't 70-17, it wasn't even 80-7. It was 87 Democrats, 0 Republicans, and you say NPR is not biased. How about the big stories over the last few years? According to Mr. Berliner, again, he wrote on the Trump-Russia story, he wrote, at NPR, we hitched our wagon to Trump's most visible antagonist, Representative Adam Schiff. He said they interviewed him 25 times. Is that accurate?
I was not there at the time, but those numbers sound accurate. Yes.
Those sound accurate. But then he said when the Mueller report came out and Robert Mueller said he found no evidence of collusion, he said, Russiagate faded from our programming. Is that accurate?
Again, I was not there at the time. I couldn't say.
You couldn't say?
I was not at NPR at the time.
You didn't prepare for that? You knew we were going to ask you about this guy, didn't you? It's come up like 6,000 times already in the hearing.
I just couldn't say whether it faded from our coverage, sir.
How about this story? October 2020, the New York Post had the Hunter Biden laptop story, and one of those editors, I guess one of those 87 Democrat editors, said this: we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. We don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' times on stories that are just pure distractions. Was that a pure distraction story?
Our current editorial leadership believes that that was a mistake, as do I.
Yeah, the whole country knows that was a mistake. Definitely impacted the election, or I think it certainly impacted the election. How about the COVID origin story? That's a pretty big story too, right? Mr. Berliner said, we became fervent members of the team natural origin, even declaring that the lab leak was debunked by scientists. Turns out, though, the lab leak is what most people think actually caused the COVID virus.
Sorry, is there a question there?
There is. You guys were 0 for 3 on the three of the biggest stories in the last 5 years. You guys were 0 for 3, and yet you maintain that NPR is not biased?
Congressman, I do not believe we are politically biased. No, we are a nonpartisan organization.
Nonpartisan organization.
Former.
Oh, I laugh. It's hilarious. 13 hours ago, Timcast News, all NPR does is lie, while simultaneously hiding behind people that they prop up as experts. Let's hear what Timmy has to say.
Targeted race-based. NPR is fake news. It was remarkable. I was driving the other day in my car, and where were we? This is when we were in L.A. I was driving around in L.A., and I put NPR. I was a Waymo, by the way. No driver, crazy. Put on NPR, and they were just lying. And it was insane how they were lying. They were talking about South Africa genocide. And what I mean by lying is they weren't telling you the truth about what was going on in South Africa. What they were doing was presenting the news from the narrative of the right believes that white people are being systemically killed. It's not true. It's like, wait, hold on. Like, report the news. South Africa passed land expropriation without compensation. There's been murders of white farmers where they've written on the wall, killed the Boer. Those things have happened, right? You can say that and then say experts argue this is not a genocide because there's been targeted race-based killings. And the argument you can make is there are targeted race-based killings in the United States. That doesn't mean black people are being genocided either. They don't do that. They just lie. They bring in experts who are like, white people believe this lie. And then they play like this guy was Malema being like, we're the only country that didn't drive the colonizers from our shores. That shows that we're not genociding them. And I'm like, it's all lies, my friends.
All lies, and that's why they need to be defunded. 100%. Cat Turd with his hot take. PBS and NPR are Democrat propaganda fake news garbage. Gotta love a little cat turd in your life. Carrie Lake, she posted this. Our government needs to cut spending to survive. Through their biased coverage, PBS and NPR put themselves on the chopping block. If they're as popular as the people leading them say they are, they should have no issue having the public fund them instead of hardworking taxpayers. And we're not going to play that clip, but that is Carrie Lake breaking it down. Oh, and here's more from The Rabbit Hole, another X account that I follow. This is Katherine Maher, the NPR CEO. Listen to her directly.
Might have become, I think our reverence for the truth might have become a bit of a distraction that is preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done. I think our
Did you hear that? Our reverence for the truth is a distraction.
Reverence for the truth might have become a bit of a distraction that is preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done.
That's the CEO of NPR. That's what they believe the truth is. A distraction. How many more reasons do I have to give you? I mean, Donald Trump's on top of this. Here's Donald Trump Jr. 16 hours ago, he posted, why should taxpayers be forced to fund NPR's BS left-wing propaganda? He was quote tweeting Molly Hemingway, NPR now claiming it has a constitutional right to taxpayer funding, your money. Here we have PBS and NPR. They can run commercials like every other privately owned media company on the planet. How are they going to get funded? Well, run commercials, right?
Sponsored media. I'm a member of the Doge.
Okay, so let's this is CNN. We have Turd Tapper on the left, and we have let's see,
Subcommittee of Oversight. We were tasked.
Representative Brandon Gill, the Republican from Texas. Okay, sorry.
I'm a member of the Doge Subcommittee of Oversight. We were tasked with finding waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government and highlighting it. And one of those that we found, which Republicans and conservatives have talked about for decades, is state-sponsored media in the United States. China and North Korea have state-sponsored media. The United States does not need state-sponsored media. Listen, if Fox News or any other conservative news organization came to me and asked for taxpayer money, I would tell them no. And I certainly don't think we should be funding left-wing propaganda outlets like NPR or PBS. I had a hearing just a couple weeks ago where I got to question the head of NPR and ask her about some of the wild, outrageous things that she had been posting on the internet for the whole world to see, and she had no answer for that. The American people are sick of funding institutions who promote values that they find repugnant, and that's what we're doing with NPR and PBS. And that's what we are hopefully soon, via a rescission bill, going to pull those funds back. I'm a member of
those funds back, baby. Let's go. InfoWars. 14 hours ago, Christian prayer rally assaulted by Antifa in Seattle. Seattle Times headline, 23 arrests at heat of fascist family values protests in Seattle. Yeah, take a look at this. Christian prayer rally assaulted. Why? Unreal. Ted Cruz had this to say, your daily reminder, 10 hours ago, that NPR is brazen political propaganda, with a screenshot from the NPR public editor. Why haven't you seen any stories from NPR about the New York Post Hunter Biden story? Read more in this week's newsletter. We don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories, and we don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions. Terrence Samuels, NPR's managing editor for news on the New York Post Hunter Biden story. So that was Ted Cruz. He posted this just 10 hours ago. The screenshot from 2020. That's what NPR felt about the Hunter Biden laptop story. You heard Jim Jordan breaking it down right there in front of the CEO of NPR. Wesley Hunt. Now that President Trump's one big, beautiful bill has passed the House, it's time to defund NPR and PBS and make Elon's Doge cuts permanent. Let's finish the job and drain every last drop of the woke waste. This is what the American people voted for. Who is with me? I am. Here we go. More. Senator Ted Cruz, the Communication Acts of 1934, requires NPR to maintain strict objectivity and balance in all programs, particularly those addressing controversial topics. Last year, I released a detailed report showing how NPR accepted millions in donations from left-wing groups. That was earmarked. Last year, I released that was earmarked for targeted coverage. So left-wing groups funding NPR so that NPR would elevate left-wing issues. After accepting the funds, NPR's reporting aligned closely with the donor agenda. The Trump administration is right to hold NPR accountable. Let's take a listen to Ted Cruz.
All of us. I would note the ranking member had some comments on the defunding of NPR, and as some might say, there is the rest of the story. The Communications Act requires public media entities like NPR to strictly adhere to, quote, objectivity and balance in all programs or series of programs on a controversial nature. Unfortunately, NPR does not. Last Congress, I put out a detailed report how NPR took millions in earmarked donations from left-wing mega donors for very specific coverage. After receiving those donations, NPR churned out content precisely mirroring its donors' agendas. Likewise, the congressionally chartered independent television service paid for documentaries like, quote, racist trees to appear on PBS. NPR CEO Katherine Maher continues to deny that NPR has a story selection problem, even when senior editors are resigning because the bias is so overwhelming. Yet NPR continues to have a dedicated news desk for climate and for race, both of which are propped up by liberal mega donors. This is the same woman who in January 2020, months before the death of George Floyd, tweeted, quote, yes, the North. Yes, all of us. Yes, America. Yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt. Yes, reparations. Yes, on this day. I think it's more than time for some accountability at NPR.
And accountability is coming. Finally. Moving right along, some of these tweets we've got exclusively bookmarked just for you, viewers of the Next News Network. Jim Banks, NPR is suing the Trump administration. He posted this 5 hours ago, arguing that defunding them undermines the First Amendment. Here's the irony. NPR's own CEO has called the First Amendment the number one challenge to censoring information. You saw her in that little TED Talk, right? Well, here's more. Like, this is her talking point.
Real market economy. The number one challenge here that we see and is, of course, the First Amendment in the United States is a fairly robust protection of rights. And that is a protection of rights both for platforms, which I actually think is very important, that platforms have those rights to be able to regulate what kind of content they want on their sites. But it also means that it is a little bit tricky to really address some of the real challenges of where does bad information come from and sort of the influence peddlers who have made a real market economy around it. The number one challenge here.
Influence peddlers. You mean people who are actually presenting the truth that you have a problem with? Here is Congressman Brandon Gill. What you hear from the NPR CEO is last dying whimper of an antiquated organization that's about to have their corporate welfare taken away. President Trump finally defunded them, and House Republicans will ensure that these cuts are permanent. 7 hours
Giving-
ago, he posted this from
What you-
Fox News Business.
Hear from Katherine Maher today is the last dying whimper of an antiquated organization that's about to have their corporate welfare pulled away from them. The American people are sick of their tax dollars funding radical left, wildly Marxist news outlets who hate the very things that this country was built on. During that hearing, I had the chance to ask her, do you believe that, for instance, America is addicted to white supremacy? She said, well, you know, I didn't really say that. Yes, you did actually say that. These people are insane, and we shouldn't be giving them our tax dollars. We're finally going to stop that. I'm so glad that we have a president who is taking this seriously. This is something that Republicans have been talking about for decades, and President Trump is finally doing it. And I can tell you, we're going to follow it up with Congress with rescission bills that permanently pull this money back.
Let's go. Pull it back. Here's some more Ali Starr. Good luck with that. Nowhere in the First Amendment does it say that taxpayers are required to fund left-wing propaganda. Reacting to the lawsuit, we saw that from Ted Cruz. Representative Andy Biggs, 16 hours ago. The First Amendment protects NPR's right to publish whatever news it wants. NPR can do it on its own dime. Taxpayer dollars should never fund propaganda fueled by Trump derangement syndrome. Quote tweeting the New York Times, breaking news, NPR said suing Trump over his executive order that aimed to end its federal funding, saying it violated the First Amendment. Cry me a river. New York Times posting that 17 hours ago. People coming in fast. Yeah. 60 Minutes Scott Peely's commencement speech at Wake Forest was 100% spot on. Free speech is literally the First Amendment. The Founding Fathers didn't make it first by accident.
But in this moment, this morning, our sacred rule of law is under attack. Journalism is under attack. Universities are under attack. Freedom of speech is under attack.
Is it really? How? I mean, I'm in the White House press corps. Seems like free speech is actually being respected. And it's expanding. More voices. More opportunities to digest information and make decisions on your own. I think that 60 Minutes Scott Peely's commencement speech is really just more fear porn from the dying mainstream media.
And insidious fear is reaching through our schools, our businesses, our homes, and into our private thoughts.
It's getting into our private thoughts. Obviously, these are all jabs at President Trump. This guy hates Trump. This guy is probably the worst of the worst when it comes to mainstream media. And he's just crying. Donald Trump's getting into our institutions. No, he's holding them accountable. There's a big difference. See, you guys just ran roughshod over institutions, over media for far too long, spreading lies and propaganda. It's 60 Minutes at NPR. Well, that party's freaking over. It's over. You going to keep crying? Let's see what else he's got to say.
The fear to speak in America.
Oh yeah, the fear to speak in America? Oh yeah? Try having a YouTube channel during the pandemic. We'll talk about free speech in America. Okay, buddy? While you guys were parroting Dr. Fauci, we were getting censored along with thousands of other Americans who were screaming. Really, dude?
Power can rewrite history with grotesque, false narratives.
My goodness, point by point, this guy. Who's the one peddling the grotesque, false narratives? NPR, 60 Minutes, the mainstream media, all of them. Wow.
They can make criminals heroes.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Who made criminals into heroes? Who is that guy? BLM. To put the foot on the neck. Oh yeah, George Floyd. Didn't the media turn him into a hero over and over and over again? Surely he's not talking about Donald Trump and his expansion of free speech in this country. No, he can't. I mean, what's he talking about here?
Heroes, criminals. Power can change the definition of the words we use to describe reality. Diversity is now described as illegal. Equity is to be shunned. Inclusion is a dirty word.
Oh, yes. I mean, listen, this guy, he's pulling out the talking points that he was handed on from on high. And listen, DEI destroying America, corporate America, media, institutions, schools. DEI on its face is racist. Bottom line. And that's why it needed to be extracted from the public. It's not about equity. It's about equality. We are all equal. And there should never be anything, any policy in any position, government, private sector, that elevates anybody based on the color of their skin. At all. Full stop.
This is an old playbook, my friends. There's nothing new in this. But in this moment...
Yeah, keep crying, dude. Keep crying. Representative Mark Harris. Sorry, NPR, but nothing in the First Amendment requires taxpayer dollars to prop up left-wing propaganda. Occupy Democrats. Uh-oh, what are they saying? National Public Radio hits Donald Trump with a massive lawsuit after he issues an authoritarian executive order targeting public broadcasting. A blatant violation of the First Amendment. And it gets better. Oh yeah, does it really? NPR will never agree to this infringement of our constitutional rights or the constitutional rights of our member stations. And NPR will not compromise our commitment to independent free press and journalistic integrity. That's what the NPR CEO, Katherine Maher, called the order unlawful. Trump signed the order earlier this month directing the Republican-controlled Congress to gut funding from NPR and PBS because he despises their fact-based approach to reality. I think we just showed you. Ted Cruz just showed you. When they get their donations, they report in favor of those left-wing causes. Fact-based approach to reality. Any outlet that refuses to magnify MAGA lies is viewed as a threat. The lawsuit was filed in federal court in Washington, D.C. and argues that the order in question flatly contravenes statutes duly enacted by Congress and violates the separation of powers and the spending clause by disregarding Congress's expressed commands. It also violates the First Amendment's guarantees of freedom of speech and of the press. Well, that's why it's gone to Congress, all right? The order's objectives could not be clearer, it reads. The order aims to punish NPR for the content of news and the programming the president dislikes and chill the free exercise of First Amendment rights by NPR and individual public radio stations across the country. National Public Radio. Funded by your tax dollars. You know how many different choices do you have in media, in news consumption? The list goes on and on and on. NPR is basically just a tumor. It's a tumor that needs to be cut out. Continuing with this ridiculous post, this must be the line in the sand. This is Occupy Democrats, of course. If we allow Trump to dismantle free speech like this and terrorize any outlets that refuse to push his Republican view of the world, we will never recover as a democracy. Make your voice heard. Okay, what do you say, Mr. President Trump?
basically all I've done is keep my promise.
Yes, you have, sir. Thank you. Please retweet and heart if you stand with NPR. So I'll ask you this question. If you got value from this report, tap subscribe because it's time for my final thought. NPR's lawsuit exposes everything wrong with government-funded media. They genuinely believe that the First Amendment guarantees them taxpayer money to spread their agenda. That is not free speech. That's forced subsidy of propaganda. For decades, NPR has pushed left-wing narratives while pretending to be neutral. And now they're panicking because the gravy train has stopped. Republicans are right. Nothing in the Constitution requires us to fund their bias. NPR can publish whatever they want on their own dime. Plain and simple. The fact that they're suing instead of seeking private funding proves they know their content cannot survive in the free market. Real journalism doesn't need government life support. Their CEO admitted free speech is their number one challenge to controlling information. That tells you everything. So here's my question for you. Should any media organization that opposes free speech receive taxpayer funding? Simply yes or no in the comments below. And make sure you check out shop.nextnewsnetwork.com for merch that supports actual independent media.